just been looking at my dress. I was going to wear it to the party, but as you can see, it's a little bit messy. I think I need to make myself something new. So I'm going to make a dress today. Will you come along and help me? So here are the things we will be using today. I've got my pins, my Velcro, a quick on pick, a pair of dressmaking scissors, and a pair of forceps. I've got my rotary cutter, and I've got a piece of card with a 1/4 of an inch line drawn on it. You will also need an iron, and I will be using a sewing machine, although you could just sew this by hand. These are the feet that I will be using for the sewing machine. This is a 1/4 inch quilter's foot, and this is the foot I shall be using to do a zigzag. I have gone ahead and I've downloaded my pattern, and then I've cut it out, not using my dressmaking scissors, using an ordinary pair of scissors. That might blunt these scissors if you were to use them to cut paper. Then I've cut out my skirt. I pinned it first, then cut it out, and then I cut out both of my back bodices, so you should have 4 pieces. I'm just going to go ahead now and cut my front bodice, which is 2 pieces which have been pinned together. I'm just going to very slowly take my time and cut across the fabric. It helps if you can keep the fabric on a flat surface, because you can get a much better cut. Make sure that you're going through both layers as you cut it. When I pinned my fabric onto the pattern, I made sure that all the fabric was pointing down, so your pattern was all going downwards. I'm just going to cut out the rest of this. As you can see, I'm keeping it as flat as I can on the surface. Just helps your hand as well to keep it a bit steadier as you go around, because you can rest the bottom of that scissors onto the board or your table as you go around. This one, remove that, and then cut this piece here. Now, one thing I did want to say was the edge of your fabric tends to sometimes have little holes in it. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. If I bring it in quite close, can you see the little hose? Now, you don't want to use this piece of fabric on the edge, because that doesn't lay properly and it tends to twist and move in a different way from the rest of the fabric. So make sure you leave that piece and don't use that in your dressmaking. Okay, just going to remove my pins. I like these type of pins with that round head. I found the other ones with just the plain metal heads quite hard to push in, and it hurts my fingers, but you might be okay with those. There we go. So that's all my pattern cut out. So we should have 2 pieces which are the bodice, and we should have 4 pieces which are the back. And what we're going to do is lay them so that the design is face down. As you can see with mine, my pattern is quite similar on both sides, so I'm just going to check each time that I've got them laid in the correct position. I'm going to place a pin into the fabric on the shoulder seam of those 2 pieces, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the shoulder seam of these 2. So making sure again that that pattern is face down. Okay, so it's face up on the one underneath, face down on the one on the top, and just pop a pin in each side. Just like so. So I have a Singer sewing machine, and I've got it set on a straight stitch here, and I've got it set on 4. Can you see? Okay, and I've got my needle set so it's in the middle. I didn't have your needle in the middle because we're using this 1/4 inch foot. Your needle would come down and hit the side of the foot and it might break the needle. I have put a new needle in because I like to work with a new needle when I'm doing a new project. And now I'm going to put my foot down onto the fabric so that the edge of the fabric is touching this side of the foot, and I'm just going to do a straight line, move the pins out of the way, straight across, but as I go in 3 or 4 stitches I'm then going to do a little back stitch to make sure those stitches stay nice and firm. Don't worry, my machine makes that noise because it's an embroidery machine and it's telling me to cut my thread on the embroidery machine. And then I'm going to go straight to the end. And I'm going to do a few stitches going back again. Okay. So go ahead now and do all of your shoulder seams in the same way. So I've just taken my fabric and I've brought down my little cushion and I'm just going to press those seams flat. Okay, just do that on both sides. Try to make sure your iron isn't too hot, especially if you're using potty cotton like I am. You can end up by burning the cotton if it gets too hot. So that's that one. Okay, I'm just going to do exactly the same again with this one. Okay, I'm going to try and fold these ones backwards and do the same on that side. There we go. Okay, you can do this on an ironing board. I've just actually got a little pillow which came with my ironing board, but there you go. So you can see it's laying really nicely. So now we have our 2 pieces. Now we're going to lay the first one down face up, and the second one we're going to take it and we're going to lay it down with the face facing down. Okay, so you should have your seams on the outside on both pieces. Okay. And then you're going to want to line up your fabric all the way around so that every edge is touching another edge. Okay. Just like that. I'm going this way. So match those 2 seams together. There, make sure that that's facing downwards. There. And match those 2 seams together there. I've done this one wrong, haven't I? Okay. And this last one just here like this. Put that one in there. That one in there. Making sure the one at the back is facing the other way. Get them nicely nestled together. You see that? And then this one just here at the end. I really like to pin. I find that it gives you that just a little bit extra support as you're running it through the machine. Okay, this is the thread I'm using. I do sometimes use other threads, but mainly I use this. This, I don't know if you can see it there. So it's a really good thread. It doesn't tend to break. I use it for embroidery and I use it for all my sewing. You'll find out as you're using a cheap thread, it will break a little bit more on the sewing machine. But if you don't mind the breakages and re-threading, then, you know, use a cheaper one. It's entirely your own preference. Okay, so I'm placing my foot right on the edge here again, and I'm going to slowly take my time and go all the way around the fabric. Do a few back stitches and then we're going to go all the way around again. Just take your time, keeping that foot on the very edge of your fabric. So as you can see, my needle is in the down position. I just had it there. I'm just going to turn the fabric so that it lines up still with that 1/4 inch piece on the edge, and then we're going to carry on sewing all the way around. Just take your time. As you can see here, we're just about going to come around this corner, so just go very slowly, taking your time. And you can gradually move your fabric until you get into the right position. No need to rush here. Just push very gently with your foot on that pedal. Take my finger there to make sure that that piece of fabric goes underneath the foot in the direction you wish it to go under. And just slightly turn it. You can see I've still got that fabric on the edge. And carry on coming around. Turn again and come down to the end. This is straight, so you can go a little bit faster. There's no need to do a mad rush. Just very lightly press down with your foot on that pedal and you'll get a much neater stitch. A little bit of back stitch to finish that off, and we're off there. Take off your thread and cut that piece away. You've got a nice straight edge running along there. Okay, and then we're going to place the foot down again with that very edge on there, but as you can see it's going to curve, so very slowly come onto here, back stitch, and then keep going forward. And I'm just going to remove my pin. Take your time. As you can see, I'm very gently moving my hands around, pushing that fabric through into the position that you want it. Keep your fingers on that seam, but don't let your fingers go too close to that needle. Take your time, running around. Last pin out. We just need to do another little back stitch. There you are. Okay. So that's that side done. And I will run around now and finish the other side as well. So there you have all your pieces sewn for the bodice at the moment. Now what we're going to do is take our sharp dressmaking scissors and we're going to snip all the way around the edge of the arm, all the way around the edge of the neck, and all the way around the edge of this arm here. Also, we need to take the corner off here and the corner off here, so we can get a nice flat corner laying there. So I'm going to carry on and just snip all the way around. Doing this allows you, when you get to turn your piece over, it will have a lovely flat seam around that neck and arm area. What you need to make sure that you do not do is cut over those stitches. If you do cut over them, then you can always go back and do another line of stitches on your sewing machine. I'm just going to turn it to go over where you've made a hole. But if you do clip into those stitches, you will get a hole in your dress, because that is what is holding the neckline together. This is going to allow the fabric to move easily and form into that nice round shape we want for the neck. Now we are going to use some forceps to pull the fabric through this armhole here, and then again this armhole here. Now I use forceps, but you can use a knitting needle, you can use tweezers, and I do believe there's a thing for making spaghetti straps which will help you pull the fabric through. So that's all I'm doing, is very gently pulling the fabric out of the dress. Just take your time, gently pull it through. Oh, there you go, it's through. Okay, and then open it up. Like so. Okay, and then just use your forceps to go in there and push that corner out. So you've got a nice straight corner there on the end. So give that nice square shape coming down the back like that. Okay, and then we're going to go back to the other side. Do the same again with our forceps. Place them through the armhole. Grab onto the fabric on this side and pull them back through. Now, what we're going to do now is just take our iron and run it around all the pieces of fabric which we have here, just to lay those flat. Run it over the top of the fabric. Just take your time. Remember, if you are a child, you must always ask an adult when using an iron or any other electrical appliances. And the scissors can be very sharp as well, so always be very, very careful. And then take this very last piece, lay that flat as well, and just give it a little run across with the iron. Okay. There you go. And you can iron the other side as well. You see how beautifully that's laid along there, and that lovely curve. That's because we did those lovely cuttings, those stitches. Right, now we're going to take this piece where we left that opening, and we're going to open it up like so. Then we're going to take the other piece and we're going to place it right on top. We're going to nestle those seams together, one pointing left and one pointing right. And then we're going to take a pin. I'm going to place a pin right in the center on that seam. And then we're going to do exactly the same with the other side. Line it up and put a pin in there. Probably a good idea would be to unplug your iron at this point. And I'm going to place my fabric under that foot, again keeping this right side right along the edge of the foot. As you can see, my fabric sort of goes in that shape. So what I'm wanting to do is to move the fabric just like we did when we did the under the arms. I did a little back stitch there. I'm just going to go straight to the very end, keeping those seams together. Move that around so it lines up correctly. And when you do get to the end, just a few back stitches. So now we're going to very carefully sew all the way along here on that second side. Just take your time. I'll do a few stitches forward. And a few stitches back. I'll just put my needle in that down position. just keep that edge of the fabric on that edge of the foot there. One other thing to make sure is that your fabric isn't going underneath, the rest of your fabric isn't going underneath. You just want those two pieces to go under. Do a little back stitch. And there you go, we've finished. That's your whole bodice done now. We just need to stitch it to the skirt. Just going to iron this piece here and this piece here just to get those laying flat before I go on to the next bit. And there you go. 1 and 2. Now all that's left to do on the bodice is to sew on the Velcro at the back. So there's your little bodice. Okay, so you can take your scissors now and neat a knot, take off any loose threads hanging down. So now what we're going to do, taking our skirt piece, making sure that this piece is at the top, that is going to be the opening of your dress. We are going to take our 1/4 inch line on our card and we're going to place it on the bottom of our skirt, and then we're going to fold our skirt up just that 1/4 inch all the way along, and take your iron, and this will give you your first fold. You need to do 2 of these, so you're just going to very slowly iron along, keeping that line of that fabric on that line of 1/4 inch. Then move it along to the next piece and go all the way down to the edge at the end, making a 1/4 inch fold. I like doing it this way because you get a nice straight hem doing it this way. You have it all the way to the end, and we're going to do exactly the same again. Just place your card on, and this time fold that first little bit of end over so that that is the end touching onto the cardboard. And then take your iron again and just go across the top. Now I have starched my fabric before I started, which you might like to do. It does help it lay flat, but there's no need to if you prefer just to use this fabric as it is. Move it along a little bit more, and see you're getting a nice neat edge there for that hem on the bottom. You should get a nice straight hem doing it in this way, all the way along the base here. And then we're going to also do the same as we're doing here with the hem up onto the sides. There we are. Okay, so that's those. Then we're going to do these 2 pieces on the sides here. We're just going to do them exactly the same as we've just done. Fold that back for the 1/4 inch, keeping your fingers out of the way. Iron along there, and then do the same again. Just fold it over that 1/4 inch again, and iron across the top. And then we'll whip it around and do the same on this side. And here we are back on the sewing machine. So I've got my hem all ironed nice and flat, and I'm just going to turn that first bit under, and once you've got it under that needle it should lay nice and flat. And what we're going to try and do is get it so that the needle is just at the top here of this line. There we go. Just going to very slowly sew all the way along the edge. Back stitch, and away we go. Just take your time keeping that stitch on that line. When we get to the end, we're just going to do a few back stitches. That just stops the thread from unravelling. Snip your ends. Okay, and then we're going to take this piece here, which is on the side, and we're just going to fold that over. Just that, so that's in that, so you've got that double fold, and then come along and stitch all the way straight down. Just as you did before. A few stitches on, back stitch, just a few, and then all the way down to the end, and a little back stitch. Okay, remove that one, remove your threads, then go to the other end and do the same again. So that will be your skirt all ready to go. Got your hem and you've got your two side pieces with the thread, with all your threads cut off, which I'm just going to finish off now because I had that starting thread. Okay, now what we're going to do now is a little bit different. Is we're going to change our the length of our stitch. So here we are, look, on the 4, and we're going to change it all the way up to as high as it will go. Mine goes up to a 7. Yours might go higher or just a bit less. And what that will do will give us, the stitch will make a much bigger stitch so that we can jump it over, and we're going to do a tacking stitch. And we're going to use this tacking stitch to gather our skirt together. So what we're going to do is get it on here, on that bit on the side where it's folded over, and we're going to put our foot down just on the 1/4 inch mark again, and we're going to go all the way along, but make sure you leave yourself a nice thread on the end because we're going to need that to gather in. Okay, so just going to do a cut straight along the fabric all the way to the end. We don't need to put a back stitch in this because you won't be able to gather it if you've got a back stitch. Okay, now before you move on to doing the next piece, you want to pull out a nice long thread. I don't know if you can see that. I've got a nice long thread there. Now what we're going to do is come back, cut that piece, and then come back to the other side again. Place your foot just above where your stitching is. My stitch is here and I'm placing my foot just above it, and let's do another row of stitches. Oh, there we go. Try not to cross over if you can help it. It just makes it harder if you've crossed over to gather. Just keep it flat. There you go. Give yourself a nice long thread again and cut. So here is the skirt, and now what we need to do is measure that skirt so that that end fits on there, that end fits on there, and the gathers are even all the way across, so that you've got a nice gathered skirt which marries up with the size of your bodice. Okay, the way we do that is take the 2 top ends of the thread and just gently push it along, like so, and that will just move it along the thread. Don't pull too hard because you might snap your threads, but gently push it along until you've got that sort of the size you want. So I'm going to pin this piece here to this side, So you've got a nice edge that they're both fitting one right on top of the other. That's how you want them to sit, like that. And then we're going to come back along to this side and put your pin just in there, okay, and marry that one up with that one. There you go, okay. Now what you need to do is just work along that gather, getting it so that we've got an even gather. We don't want a big clump of gather here, and then look, as you can see, there's not very much here. We want it nice and even going along. And then we want to take our pins all the way up and marry that up. So get it nice and straight. You should be able to pull that out to what you want it. Make sure that bottom and the top of the bodice are laying flat together, and then you want to pin it all the way along. And when I'm doing this, I like to put my pins in so they're facing down the fabric. It makes it much easier to pull out. One thing you want to make sure as you're pinning along is that you don't catch any extra bits of fabric like this and pull them into different places where they shouldn't be. You just want this top base and that bottom piece coming along there. So there you have it. That's your two pieces, your skirt and your top pinned together. Now we're going to run along with the sewing machine doing a single stitch just as we've done before, but make sure this time that you turn your stitch where it was here, like on 7. We want to turn it back to the 4 again. There you go, okay. And then we're going to go back to our sewing machine. I'll just put my pins over here so I can take them out quickly. And what we're going to do is we are going to sew just under that line there of stitching. So you're just going to get a tiny bit under that 1/4 inch this time. Take out my first pin, and I'm going to put my foot down into the needle down position, so then when I have to move my pins out, it won't fall off the machine. I'm just doing a few back stitches and then we can get into this. Let's push that in there. Now this might be a bit stiff because you are going through a couple of layers of fabric here, so just take your time. There's no need to get stressed or worried that it's not moving. It will go through. Just give it a little bit of time. You have to just gently push it through. Pins out as we go. You can, some people do sew over the top of their pins. I don't like to because I broke several needles doing it, and it always makes me jump. I'm always afraid the needle is going to fly up and hit me in the face. Never has, but it just always gives me that fright when it happens. So I prefer to take them out as I go along. Make sure that your bodice is laying flat. You don't want part of it getting sewn underneath. Just take your time. I always prefer to have the gathered bit on the top so I can see what I'm doing. Make sure that the gathers are laying down flat and that you're not getting any lumps of fabric going up underneath that needle. And just catch those last pieces at the end. You want them to marry up and be nice and straight. And come back, do a few back stitches, and there you go. Okay, lift your needle up and cut your threads. You can cut all of your threads now along there, and the same on this side. Okay, right, now there we have our bodice stitched on to our skirt. So what we're going to do next is to find the two ends of the bodice, here and here, and we're going to put them together. I'm going to just lose that thread there. My machine's got a piece on it so that you can trim your threads on the end there. It does tend to, though, gather that up a little bit, so you have to sort of like push that back along if you're going to use that. Probably better to use the scissors, I expect. And what I'm going to do is take in these two pieces here, we are going to stitch all the way down like that. Okay, so I'm going to put it onto my, I'm going to put a pin in it first actually, so that I get those two pieces married up together perfectly on the bottom. That's going to be the most important piece to get straight. And then here I'm just going to come in a tiny bit like so, and I'm going to do a double stitch on this because I find that when the children are pulling at this piece, this is the piece where it does tend to come undone. I'm going to come in a diagonal and just go across and back, and then we're going to come across, and then we're going to come straight down to the dress, so those two pieces of hem at the base marry up. So we're going to get that one to come in onto that 1/4 inch, keeping those two together, and you might have to wiggle it around so you've got them both in the same place at the bottom. And again, just take your time. Come right down to that base there. I'm going to do a couple of back stitches, and there you go. Just remove your thread, and remove your thread there, and that's looking good. So on my sewing machine, I just have a little lever here at the back. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to pop that down there so you can get in a little bit closer to the sewing machine. This is my little lever, and I just pull the lever up and my foot falls off. And then I'm going to just exchange it with that foot, and I'm going to bring my foot lever at the back down, and I've got a different foot on it, and I'm going to show you the mouth of the foot. There we go. Okay, and then you see it's got a much wider gap there than that one. That one has only got a hole. Okay, and we're going to come over here, and I'm keeping my stitch length the same. We're going to come up here, and we're on a straight stitch. We're going to change it to number 7, which is a zigzag stitch. So what we're going to do now is we're going to zigzag all the way along here, which is where your bodice meets your skirt. So we're going to give it a nice zigzag stitch all the way along, and then we're going to give a zigzag stitch all the way down the piece we've just sewn. So we'll start with the piece we've just sewn. Put your needle down, and then we're going to go all the way up, and we're going to stop when we get to this piece here. Okay, so just do a few back stitches and off we go. Few back stitches there. Okay, and I hope you can see that's neatened that up really nicely. I'm going to take my scissors and cut that long thread, and as you do as well, what you can do is you can just go along. Look, and I've got a thread there, so I'm going to cut that one off. Just neaten that up there. Okay, and cut that end thread off, and as you can see, that looks much nicer. You don't have to do this. If you're hand sewing, I wouldn't. You won't need to do that at all. I like to do it because it just gives you that much neater look to your finished article. Okay, and then we're going to take the bodice and the skirt and carefully place it in. You want to make sure it's flat, and you want to make sure that this piece underneath is laying flat under, so it doesn't come up over this side, and because you don't want to sew onto that. And we're just going to do exactly the same again. A few stitches forward, back, and then straight along. Take off your ends there of your cotton, and then we're going to go along and we're going to trim all the way along, making sure we don't cut into that stitch, that zigzag stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to take all those long threads off and neaten it up. Okay, so that's your dress, and you pull it out. Now I've got my quick on pick, and you can take your quick on pick and you can walk along your dress and have a look and see if you've got any stitches which have come over. And if you do, I've noticed there's one just here. Look, you can just put your needle into the stitch and pull it out. Just give yourself a nice clean edge around there, and then take your scissors and snip the stitch off. There we go. And just check all the way along, making sure there's no other stitches coming through the fabric. So there we go, I've got the dress all together and I've checked it all the way around and there are no extra stitches. So now we're going to come to the fastenings. What I've managed to get is this Velcro. I've managed to get it from eBay. Now you can use any sort of Velcro. You can use a pop fastener or a hook and eye, it doesn't matter which one you choose, but you want something which is going to be easy for the children. You can use a button if you like, it's not a problem. And what we're going to do, this Velcro is a much softer one, as you can see. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this piece on the inside of the dress, like so, and run it down through and just finish it just after that piece of the waistband. So I'm just going to cut it there. Okay, and then we're going to cut another piece of the soft side, the loop side, and we're just going to put that on top so that we can get the same size piece and chop it there. Now, so I'm going to put this one on the inside, and I'm going to get a pin. I'm just going to start my pin just in here. Now this is hard, this bit, because it never seems to want to go through the pin. The pin never seems to want to go through the Velcro. Okay, and I only ever put one in because otherwise I find that it moves around even with the pins in it, and I find it much better to stitch just straight down there like so. And we'll do exactly the same with the other side, but what we're going to do is put our piece on top of the dress so that you're going to have the top piece will lay straight across the bottom piece. Try and get it lined up with about where the other piece started. Okay, pop your pin in, and then we're going to move on to the sewing machine. Okay. So I'm going to start sewing here. I'm going to lift up my foot and make sure that you've changed from your zigzag stitch back to your straight stitch. And then we're going to place the foot onto the Velcro like so and push it down, and then I'm going to place my needle into the Velcro at the end. It's a little bit fiddly because it wants to move around and dance about. Just going to move it along a little bit. I'm going to place that needle in that down position, and then I'm going to take out my pin where I've got it held here. I just find that it seems to work. It's much harder when you pin it. The Velcro moves around, it seems to have a mind of its own. I like to keep that waistband facing downwards. So just very slowly, take your time and come up that Velcro. If something's wrong with my needle, is it? No, you're right, am I right? Okay, go all the way up to the top. See how I moved that and tucked that piece of Velcro in. And then we're going to turn it, and I like to do 2 rows of stitching when I'm doing it, because especially if it's going to be used by children, they do pull at it. And I have left my bigger foot on because I prefer to use that one when I'm using the button the Velcro's on. Just a few backward stitches. And we've done. There we go. Sometimes that does happen with your needle when you're using Velcro. It tends to catch up some of the thread of the needle in the actual hooks. So it tends to happen on that hook, on the hook side, and not on the loop side. There we go. Careful that you don't sort of go into your dress and cut part of your dress as well. If you do find you've got a small piece of Velcro hanging over the top, which I have there, I'm just going to trim that one away. Okay, then we're going to go on to the other side. We're going to do exactly the same again, but this time we need to make sure that we're on the other side, so the top of the dress, the outside of the dress, rather than the inside of the dress. Get it laying flat on your fabric. Just takes a bit of fiddling around with, and then drop your foot on and then place your needle into the Velcro before you start. And I will remove that pin, so I've got mine nice and lined up, and just take my time, a few forward stitches and then a few back stitches. Keeping it in that place where you want it to be. Okay, and then you can turn it. You can do a little bit of that across the top if you wish, and then down the other side. A few back stitches, I think, just because it's going to be used by a child, so I don't want the Velcro coming away when the child is using it. And there you have your little dress. Just cut off those long threads. Is there another one? No, that's it. And there we go. I've just finished my dress. It looks really nice. I hope you like it. I'm going to make myself a hairband and a embellishment to go on my dress next. Will you come and join me next time? Goodbye.